Hi, and welcome to the 2024 Tulsa Master Gardeners Plant Sale. We are so excited to have you here and so appreciative that you are purchasing from us. We have a great lineup of plants this year, many new ones, and some of our old favorites. These plants from the plant sale, of course, help to sponsor all the wonderful community events that we do in our city. This year, our plant sale will stop. Orders will end on Sunday, March 17th at midnight. It is all online, of course. We will pick up our orders on April the 18th. That's tax week, Thursday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the Tulsa Fairgrounds Exchange Center. You can remain in your car, and Master Gardener will help you to place the plants in your vehicle, and you'll be on your way to planting. It is such a great idea. Master gardeners and gardeners in general are just have such an expectancy, and this plant sale kind of kicks everything off. And we will be featuring, as we usually do, annuals by the flat 36. We have accent greenery in 4-inch pots, annuals, perennials, herbs, milkweeds, of course, ornamental grasses, and fruits and vegetables. Let's start with one of our flats. 36 plants in each flat, as I said. This is a begonia, a little different variety, it being a green leaf with a very deep pink flower. The green leaf are a fibrous rooted begonia, which makes them with very thick waxy leaves and a compact mound. The yellow-eyed rose pink flowers are very attractive and very large. It blooms from late spring to late summer, and it takes the hot and humid conditions. It's good in garden beds, containers, and hanging baskets. If you fertilize every 2 weeks, you'll retain that good color, and these guys will flourish in the shade until it gets to be about 34 degrees, and then that is the end. Zinnias in our flats, this is the Profusion series. The Profusion is a hybrid Profusion series. It's a cross between the Elegans zinnia and the Angustifolia, which makes it very, very hardy. It's disease resistant, heat tolerant, and humidity tolerant, which is really, really good, which means there'll be less disease on the leaves, if any, usually not. It blooms from early summer to frost. There's no deadheading required, which is great. It reaches about 18 inches tall and about 24-inch spread. Butterflies love the 2-inch blooms. And in the center, there's a circle of golden stars around that center disc, which makes it very attractive. It likes well-draining soil. This is the double sunrise mix, which has the sunrise colors. We also have the Profusion Fire, which is just a color that pops. It's brighter than an orange, has a little bit of deep orange in it. And in mass plantings, this is so attractive to attract pollinators. Really, really one of the best annuals to attract pollinators. We also have the Profusion Mix, which has included the magenta color along with the sunrise we just looked at. And then finally, we have the Zahara Mix, which is very similar to the Profusion, but the flowers they claim sometimes will be 20% larger than the Profusion. And sometimes you can't tell the difference. I personally can't, but both of these varieties are very attractive. This particular mix does not have as much of the magenta, so you can choose between the two. In our accents and greenery, we have the variegated Swedish ivy, which is the variegated Plectranthus. It has very fragrant foliage. You may know it as Swedish ivy. It has a very insignificant purple flower. You don't usually see it. We plant this and use it in containers and baskets to flow over the side because the leaves are framed in this beautiful white that is a great accent to any other flowers. It's a nice filler for any pot, and the baskets do very, very well with it beginning to trail over the basket, but it's also good on walls, and some people even use this in an area for ground cover. This is going to be a sun or part sun plant, and it is very, very attractive. This is the variegated Swedish ivy. Sun coleus are very fun. This is in a 4.5-inch pot. Our first tree is called Downtown Santa Monica. How fun is that? And it is a really, really pretty leaf. It's called a freaky leaf in the jungle trend, which is where gardeners are planting plants that look a little bit on the wild side, a new trend for this year. The red leaves have a border of green and purple and flecks of gold. So very attractive. A compact habit. It grows to be about 18 inches. This is going to be in full sun for coleus, which is usually coleus are grown in the shade. So this is a new variety, fine textured serrated leaves, and it's great as a specimen plant because it just pops. Now the Inferno is one that's going to grow a little bit taller to about 28 inches. It's got a mounding habit also. It is just a very, very pretty burgundy red orange, and it is the serrated leaves just kind of tip off that beautiful color. And this is really a good one to use in mass because the color just fills in the garden. You notice I have it here paired with purple, which really sets off that beautiful, juicy orange. The Sun Coleus Kingswood Torch is one that's going to grow a little bit even taller, 3 to 4 inches. And it is one that's going to be fuchsia. It's very electrifying, by the way, because the fuchsia and the maroon foliage is complemented by a scallop leaf that's edged in that lime green. So it just pops. If you will keep the color bright on this one, regular fertilizer and water every couple weeks will keep the colors more vibrant. And then finally is the Wasabi. This is another Sun Coleus, grows about 36 inches. And it is an upright Sun Coleus. And if you notice here, I've got it paired with some other flowers in the garden. It does really, really well. It has lobed leaves. And wherever in the garden that you just want a kick of color, the chartreuse green is always just really, really fantastic for that. Lantana, we've got a really great variety this year of lantana. And I want to point out that not only the colors are different, but lantanas are rated as a bushy upright or a compact mound or a spreading or a trailing. So keep in mind that those are the things we're looking for to see where you want to put it in the garden. The Bandolero Pink is very heat and drought tolerant. It's also deer resistant for people who have that need. There's no deadheading required. This one grows about 24 inches tall and wide, and it is a mounding variety. So it's going to mound in the garden. Now the Bandolisto, we have it in the coconut and the mango, both very attractive. They are a sterile lantana, which means they're not going to have any fruit or any berries. They will have more flowers. This particular one is going to be a semi-trailing. So this is be a great one to put in a container or over a wall in a basket. It goes about 18 inches tall and it spreads to about 30 inches in the Bandolisto. Keep in mind that all lantanas attract bees, butterflies, and hummers, which is what we want to do in our gardens this year to attract these pollinators and give them pollen and nectar. The series of the Sun Coleus is pink and yellow and magenta flowers. It has a spreading habit, so not so much trailing, but spreading. You'll notice the leaves are variegated on this one. If you mass it as a ground cover, because it spreads, it's very, very attractive. It's about 2 to 3 inches tall is all, but it can spread as much as 8 feet. So that is a great one for ground cover. And of course, all of these coleus are going to be in the sun. They will take part shade, but they do well in sun. They do their best in sun. The Fireworks series is a mounding lantana, and it can be deadheaded for aesthetics if you want to, but you don't ever need to deadhead lantana. Fireworks, of course, has this pretty color that looks like a fireworks display, and it's very attractive in a mounding habit. And finally, we have on this particular one is the Irene, which is considered a shrub type lantana because it can get as tall as 3 feet, but it's wider than it is tall, so it can go as far as wide as 6 feet. So it's upright, but still wide. And the color on the flowers will change with age. And this particular one is one that's special because it's supposed to be more tolerant of pollution. So if you want to plant it on perhaps the islands in the street where there's a lot of car exhaust, this one will not react to any pollution. The leaves and berries on this one in particular are toxic, as are all lantanas and many other flowers. But just to know that this is one that you don't want your animals to graze on. Another variety is the Landmark Sunrise Rose. Very, very pretty. The berries on this one makes bigger berries, and they can be eaten by birds. This is another one that can be pruned. The Landmark Sunrise Rose grows about 16 inches tall. That's height and width or spread. The little lucky pot of gold, as you can see, is a very, very bright color. It's a mounding. This one's deer and rabbit resistant, as are most lantanas. And it's very attractive because it's going to be a solid color to give you a mass look in the garden. Little Lucky Red is has a little bit of orange in with the yellow. And this is also a mounding, but it's going to mound a little taller, up to a foot. So this is Little Lucky Red. And finally, and by the way, the pot of gold that we have, the pot of gold, Little Lucky Pot of Gold, it is one that is going to have a little bit smaller leaves, and the color is just vibrant. It's called gold, but it may look yellow in the garden also. And then finally, on our new gold, it is a mounding variety, and this one has more scented foliage than the other ones do. And lantana, just so you'll know, attract not only bees and butterflies and birds if there's berries, but also the hummingbird moth really likes it, and night moths will come and pollinate, especially the lighter colors like the pot of gold and the new gold. And all of these lantanas are in the Camara family, the Camara genus. Okay, let's go ahead and start on some of our perennials. This is the Achillea or Achillea millefolium. It is our favorite yarrow. This comes in a quart size for our perennial flowers. This particular one is going to be a sun, and it is perennial. Yarrow is one of the keystone plants of three. There's yarrow, and there's helianthus, which is going to be the sunflowers, and then aster. And those three are noted by our scientists and entomologists to attract the most pollinators and also to attract beneficial insects. This one is certainly good as a cut flower, the yarrow. It's also good for dried flower. The moonshine, which is the yellow on the left, is going to be probably the most fast growing. It grows to about 2 feet tall. It likes dry, well-drained soil, and the flat top canary yellow blossoms are set off by a silvery foliage underneath. If you cut back to half after they bloom, then you will probably have a rebloom toward the end of the summer. Paprika, isn't that happy? Isn't that fun color? Paprika is a bloomer from June to September, and it has a ruby red, which fades to a salmon color or a pink. So it's going to change colors. It has a pretty yellow eye with dark green foliage, which sets off that pink or salmon with the yellow. Our last variety that we're promoting is the Sky Sail Bright Pink, and it grows to about 14 inches tall and wide. So this is going to be a shorter one, and the foliage on it is dark green. So all the yarrows are very, very beneficial in the garden. Everybody needs one yarrow for sure, maybe even 3. The aster is the other keystone plant that I mentioned. This is the one is called the aromatic aster, and it's a Symphytrochium obligongifolium, and it is really a mouthful, so we'll just say it's an aster. This one is native to Oklahoma. It loves full sun. It is a pollinator plant, and it has good rigid stems and has a good multi-branching habit, which will support the flowers. If you trim it back to about half in June, it will have more flowers and be more floriferous and more compact and tidy in the fall when it blooms. It's a great one, of course, to attract and to feed the migrating monarchs as they go back south to Mexico, but it's also great for native bees and butterflies. Flowers on this one can be rose or lavender blue or even purple, depending on your soil. The disc or the fertile floret in the middle will change with age to brown or purple. So very, very attractive. The special value of this plant is to our native bees. We hear a lot about honeybees, but native bees are ones that we want to attract and feed. It also is one that supplies food for the pollen specialist native bees, which means they need a special pollen to bring back to their nests, which are in the ground or in cavities. This aster will attract predatory and parasitoid insects, which means beneficial insects that will help to consume the 1% pests or insects that we don't want. Of course, again, this is a sun pollinator plant, grows to about 20 inches tall, the aster. a wonderful native plant called Baptisia australis. This is the blue false indigo, and it's also called wild indigo. It is from the Fabaceae family, which is the pea family, and it has a woody base with blue flowers, and the pea-like flowers come up in a spike that's about 4 to 6 inches long when it blooms, and the spike is upright and it's terminal, and so it's very, very attractive, and it lasts quite a long time. The three leaflet leaves turn silvery in the fall, which is a different, another aspect of this plant that's very attractive. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner, that shows what the buds look like, or the seeds, after it blooms. So it stays attractive all through the season. This particular plant, being a native, requires some endomycorrhizae, which is something that they attract or they absorb through their root zone, which helps to form nitrogen in the soil. So this is a great plant to replenish the soil. Also, it blooms April through July. It's native again to Oklahoma. And one fascinating thing about this being a native plant, it absorbs toxins from the air and the soil. Very, very interesting plant, the Baptisia australis. Everybody needs one. Okay, a new one this year we're promoting and selling is called the Dianthus pot carnation. It's Barberini purple bicolor. What a fun word. Hey, what's that? That's a Barberini purple. And it is, of course, one of our Dianthus. It's good in the ground. It's also good in containers. It has a deep purple center, which is so attractive. And then the edges are a lighter purple. It's richly fragrant. The flowers are. It has like a spicy clove fragrant. It's much like the old fire witch Dianthus we used to have, which was one of the first fragrant Dianthus that was on the market. This one attracts butterflies. And if you have a situation with bunnies eating your annuals, this one is bunny resistant. It's a sun plant, of course, pollinator. Most of our pollinators are going to be sun plants because butterflies have to have the sun to be able to fly and to operate. And so most of their flowers that they're attracted to are going to be in full sun. About 6 to 8 inches tall and about 12 inches wide on this Dianthus Barberini. Echinacea, coneflower purpurea. This is a must for every garden. We have two different purpureas this year, which is the native coneflower. They are from families, know that they're going to attract pollinators and beneficial insects, being another keystone plant from the aster family. The first one is powwow white, which is a really, really true white. The cone has yellow fertile florets. Those are actually little flowers in the cone. And the white ray flowers that come out have a tendency to go downward instead of upward, like on the Rudbeckia. And this, by the way, on coneflower, after they quit blooming, they will go to seed, and you notice the hummer is there for some pollen and nectar, but other birds will come for the seeds later in the season. The regular purple coneflower without any hybridization is the native coneflower, the purpurea, and it is native to Oklahoma. It's about 4 feet tall, and this one has a fibrous root system, whereas most coneflower or echinacea have a taproot. The golden red to purple flowers that can be different in different sun bloom from June to September. Some people say that they have a scent, a really strong scent in the hot part of the afternoon when the sun is hitting the plant. You can deadhead after these bloom for more fall blooms, but you want to leave them up in the fall so that they'll go to seed head for the birds. They attract butterflies and native bees. You'll notice in the picture I've tried to include a butterfly, some bees, looks like some honeybees, native bees, and even native flies, as well as the hummer. Don't you just love him on there? Greg's mistflower. This is a common Clinium. It's a guy from Tennessee that was named Josiah Gregg, actually, and he discovered 25 different species, so they included his name in the Gregg I title. This is another one from the aster family, and sometimes people are a little reticent to get this one because it is not invasive, but it is aggressive, which means it reseeds readily. So on this one, if you notice the pictures, it is such a butterfly magnet. It's so good to have in the garden. If you can just remember to cut it back after it flowers so that it doesn't form seeds, and then it will not be as aggressive. The purplish blue flowers form a fluffy 2-inch cushion head, which the butterflies love because they can land on it, they taste with their feet, and this is one that they can really nectar a great deal on. It likes dry soil, sun or part sun, and remember to cut it back after it flowers. Liatris spicata, or the purple blazing star, is also called the dense blazing star. It is a native pollinator for sun. It's a little late bloomer. This particular one blooms later than any of the Liatris, and it is one that is going to come off of a basal leaf at the bottom and shoot a stalk up, a flower stalk. It emerges from that grass-like foliage in lavender, pink, or purple, and it blooms from August to September. It is a cormous plant, which means it comes from a corm, which tells us that it does not like wet feet. We don't want that corm to rot in the ground. So it needs well-draining soil. And this plant is native to the Midwest in some of our meadows that are very well-draining with not a lot of water. However, it will do well in a rain garden because it likes moist soil, but it just likes the well-draining that's not going to have water sitting. So you can use it in a rain garden. When the water comes through from the rain and then drains, it makes a great plant for that position. It attracts butterflies, bees, hummers, and then birds eat the seed heads later. And it's also a host plant for some of the small moths, Liatris spicata. Rudbeckia. This is a wonderful plant that many people confuse with the coneflower or the echinacea. However, the easiest way to remember these is that the Rudbeckia is one that usually the petals or the ray flowers go upward. Now, the one in the center, sometimes they will go down, but the Rudbeckia is known, of course, the Fulgida is our plant that is called the gold stem, black-eyed Susan, and it is one that is a herbaceous perennial from the aster family again, gets about 2 or 3 feet tall and about 2 feet wide. The large daisy-like flowers last from June until September, so it's a long blooming period. The flowers can be 2.5 inches across. This particular one, gold stem, was introduced back in 1937, so this is a good performer, has stayed around a long time. Sometimes people call this the black-eyed Susan, but the disc or the fertile florets can also be brown, and so we get the name thence, the brown-eyed Susan. This makes a good cut flower, and it can go in soil that's well-draining from wet to dry. The next variety of Rudbeckia is called the Rudbeckia hirta, and this is the black-eyed Susan called Toto Gold. This usually comes out, it will bloom later in the fall. It's a black-eyed Susan also, but it's a little bit more compact, and it is erect, and it's a biennial or a short-lived perennial, but it gives you your bang for the pop for your bang right off the bat, and it will do so well. That's why it's so loved. It is a golden yellow flower with brown centers, so thus it can be a brown-eyed Susan. It's a sun and pollinator plant, and it's one that is great in the garden. In our herbs section, we have several herbs that we're introducing, but I'm going to talk about the basil a little bit because the basils have something that you can look at. Maybe you've never thought of what the differences are. So I just wanted to touch on this. I thought it would be something interesting to you. You know, of course, all basil is Ocimum basilicum is the name for it, and repels mosquitoes and flies. So they're great to have around the garden, interspersed among your other plants. Really fun to have. You know, repelling insects like that is a good thing, mosquitoes and flies. Our first variety that we're showing is the lemon basil. And the lemon basil is the one that you can eat fresh. Very tasty to eat it raw in salads. It's used a lot in Indonesian cuisine. And there it's called kemanji, which is kind of fun. What kind of basil is that? That's kemanji, and that's with a K. The pesto perpetu is a Brazilian basil, which tells us that it's going to like full sun and heat. It is a columnar basil, and there's no flowers on the perpetu. So one that has a very interesting look. And by the way, since there's no flowers on this one, this is the only variety of basil that will not be a pollinator plant. The others, if you let them go to flower, which sometimes changes the taste of the leaves for pesto, but they make great pollinator plants, and our native insects love the nectar and the pollen on these particular plants. The next variety is the purple ruffles. Purple ruffles can be one that will reseed readily. So if you keep this one cut back, it's just so attractive. The color in the garden paired with other things in full sun, you can see how it's really a pop. But the purple is special because, and the reason I like it, and I like to cut it back before it reseeds because I only want so much of it, but it has a very fragrant licorice and cinnamon flavor, and the fragrance of it is also similar to that. So it's really a fun basil when you bruise the leaves. Very, very fun. And keep in mind that when planting basil, if you plant it along the walkway when you walk by and bruise it, it's a very, very attractive one besides using it for pesto or for pollinators. The spicy globe is going to be our bush basil. This to be only like 6 to 12 inches, so you don't want to plant it. You want to plant it in the foreground so that you don't lose it in the garden. This particular one for pesto is going to be more spicy, and it likes AM morning sun, but it likes PM shade in our hot Oklahoma summers because you don't want the leaves to scorch. And last but not least is the sweet basil, which has a wonderful, probably the best anise flavor, which is a licorice flavor. And this is actually a subtype of the basil family, but this one is the one that holds up best for cooking. It won't break down as readily. And of course, all the basils come in a 4-inch pot. They are from Northern Africa and Asia, so you know the kind of conditions that they're looking at in full sun. And all are extremely frost sensitive. So I always tell people, if you want to save those leaves to freeze for pesto, make sure you don't leave them out in a frost. Want to mention very briefly our very so good, the Asclepias is one that we plant for the monarch butterfly, of course. It is a specialist plant. The monarch will only lay eggs on the Asclepias or the milkweed because it's a host plant for her because her caterpillars can't eat anything else. This particular variety is one of our perennials, which is a good thing to plant so you don't have to replant every year. They get bigger and better every year in the garden. This is an Asclepias incarnata, which is a swamp milkweed, and the colors are very, very vibrant. That one gets a little bit taller than this particular variety. That one can be up to 4 feet. This one is the butterfly milkweed, the Asclepias tuberosa, and this has everyone's favorite, just bright, happy, fun orange with a little yellow. And this tuberosa, called the butterfly weed, is another host plant, but actually the Asclepias incarnata is probably a little more favorite than this one as a host plant. I'm going to mention the ones that we're sponsoring, that we're showing in the tropical milkweeds, the Carassivica, Asclepias carassivica. We are showing the Apollo orange, which is very pretty in the garden, the silky gold, and there, of course, is the caterpillar of the monarch, and he is just eating away before he goes and becomes a chrysalis and then an adult butterfly. And then the last one is the silky red. There has been some question about these Carassivicas, or tropical. People have had some debate that you shouldn't leave them up in the garden in the fall because it keeps the monarchs too long in our area. And actually what all the organizations that study these have come up with now is to say that the ones in Texas may do that, but here in Oklahoma, we're pretty safe. So you can enjoy these all the way through the season before they die back as a tropical when it gets below 50 degrees. One of our ornamental grasses this year is called the Carex Amazon mist. Very, very attractive foliage. As you can see, it almost looks like a little bit just like a soft blow in the wind sedge. And this one likes more sun than most sedges like. The mint green foliage is so soft and textured that with just a little bit of wind, the silvery undersides of the leaves just blow and move. A lot of movement in the garden. Very attractive. You need to plant these. They get, let's say, about 12 inches tall, so they're not real large, but you want to plant them about 18 inches apart in a mass planting. They do very well in mass. They are very, very pretty. They're stunning when you plant them in a group, but also just one as a specimen plant in a container is very, very pretty with some upright plants in the same container. They like moist, well-drained soil, which means if you have a wet spot in the yard, this is a great perennial to plant. You can cut these guys back about by a third if you want to just increase their look. You also can tease them out like you would the Mexican feathergrass that we also have sold before, and you just tease out the brown kind of with a little rake, and it will keep them looking really, really good. These are good to use as edging. They're great on slopes to hold the soil. And like I said, they will do well in wet spaces. They like sun, they'll take part sun, they'll even take a little part shade. So that is going to be a Carex Amazon Mist. So in picking your plants this year from our plant sale, please keep in mind that you want to look at the pollinator plants and the native plants, because what you plant really makes a difference. And share with your neighbors in your neighborhood, because we want to make sure that we have plants. Bees and butterflies don't travel that far to find their nectar and pollen. So promote it with your neighbors and maybe get them to buy a couple plants that promote pollen too, because that way we'll create corridors so that our insects and our pollinators will have a lot of food to eat. And again, we just thank you so very much for shopping with us, and we're excited to see you on pickup day. And remember that we're only open online until March 17th at midnight. Thank you.